The morning mist hung low over Cedar Lake, wrapping the water in a soft, gray veil. I was sipping coffee on my deck, watching the world wake up, when I spotted her, Deborah Fitzgerald, our HOA president, marching toward the shore like she was, leading a charge at Gettysburg. Her laminated rule book was clutched in her hand like a holy relic, and her sensible khakis swished with purpose. I just fired up my jet ski, the engine's low rumble cutting through the quiet, when she waded into the water. Yes, waded. Dan started hollering, "Michael Harrison, you are in direct violation of HOA Code 7.35. Her voice boomed across the lake like a foghorn. No motorized watercraft shall operate on community waters without board approval. I cut the engine, letting the jet ski glide toward her. She stood knee-deep, looking like an angry heron, her face already flushing red. I reached into the waterproof pouch I kept strapped to the seat and pulled out my property deed. Clearing my throat, I read the one line that I knew would stop her cold. The owner of Lot 47 retains exclusive riparian rights to the eastern shore of Cedar Lake, including unrestricted use of watercraft. Her face went from tomato red to ghost white in 3 seconds flat. She stumbled backward, nearly losing her footing in the muddy lake bottom, then turned and sloshed back to shore without a word. That was the moment I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. My name's Michael Harrison. I'm 38, a software developer who works from home, and 3 years ago, after a messy divorce, I decided to start over. I bought a modest lakefront house in Pine Ridge Estates, a suburban neighborhood where the lawns are manicured and the mailboxes are all the same shade of beige. The house itself wasn't much a fixer-upper with creaky floors and a leaky roof, but the real prize was the eastern shore of Cedar Lake. That slice of waterfront was my sanctuary, mornings on the water, evenings fishing off my private dock, and weekends tearing across the lake on my brand new Sea-Doo Spark Tricks. That jet ski, bright orange and loud as hell, was my declaration of freedom. Deborah Fitzgerald, though, had other ideas. She'd been HOA president for 12 years, which in neighborhood politics is basically a dictatorship. She ruled Pine Ridge like it was her personal fiefdom, measuring grass height with a ruler and issuing fines for anything that didn't fit her vision of community standards. The woman once fined the Johnsons $300 because their garden gnome was whimsically inappropriate. I'd managed to stay off her radar for my first year, keeping my lawn at the regulation to 0.5 inches and nodding politely at her power walks with her yappy Yorkie, Princess. But the day I rolled up with my jet ski on a trailer, I might as well have painted a target on my back. She was at my door within an hour, her rule book tucked under her arm like a weapon. "Mr. Harrison," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "all watercraft require HOA approval and a 90-day community impact assessment. I'm sure you understand how we maintain our standards here." I smiled, polite as could be, and pointed out the riparian rights in my deed. She snorted. Actually snorted. Dan said, "Young man, HOA rules supersede any previous agreements. That's how communities function." The first warning came the next morning, taped to my dock. Post, notice of violation, unauthorized watercraft storage. Fine, $75. I ignored it, took the jet ski out for a sunrise spin, and made sure to wave at Deborah as she power walked by with Princess. The second warning arrived via certified mail. Excessive noise during quiet hours. Fine, $150. Never mind that I'd only been out between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. on a Saturday. I framed that one and hung it in my garage next to my jet ski maintenance schedule. Deborah didn't stop there. She started rallying the neighbors, turning them against the rebellious bachelor and his noise machine. She convinced Roger Pelton, 2 houses down, that my jet ski was scaring off the bass he'd been trying to catch for 5 years. She told the Washingtons that my exhaust was poisoning their prized water lilies. By week 3, half the neighborhood was giving me the stink eye at the mailbox. Then came the emergency HOA meeting, called specifically to address the watercraft situation. I showed up with my deed and Sandra Mills, a real estate attorney, who specialized in property rights. The meeting was in the community center, a beige box that smelled like stale coffee and self-righteousness. Deborah stood at the podium like she was delivering a TED Talk, Her eyes locked on me. Our community values peace, tranquility, and respectful enjoyment of shared resources, she began. One resident's selfish desire for thrills cannot override the collective good. She clicked through a slideshow of blurry photos of me on the jet ski, each one labeled with supposed violations: excessive wake creation, aggressive maneuvering, intimidating wildlife. One photo showed a duck swimming nearby, looking completely unbothered. When it was my turn, Sandra didn't waste time. She slapped a copy of my deed on the overhead projector and highlighted the key section. Mr. Harrison's property includes deeded water rights that predate the Pine Ridge Estate's HOA by 15 years, she said calmly. These rights cannot be restricted or regulated by any subsequent homeowners association. The room went dead silent. Deborah's mouth opened and closed like a stranded fish. Someone in the back started a slow clap before getting shushed. Sandra went on, her smile sharp as a blade. Furthermore, any attempt to restrict Mr. Harrison's use of his deeded water access could result in significant legal liability for the HOA and its board members personally. Deborah tried to rally, shuffling her papers, but surely the noise ordinances apply. And what about the environmental impact? We have a duty to protect the lake ecosystem. Sandra pulled out another document. Cedar Lake is a recreational waterway per state law. Jet skis are explicitly permitted during daylight hours. As for environmental impact, Mr. Harrison's Sea-Doo meets all EPA standards for watercraft emissions. The other board members started sweating. Tom Bradley, the treasurer, muttered something about liability insurance. Martha Chen, the secretary, suddenly remembered she had a dentist appointment. The meeting ended with no vote, just a lot of awkward coughing. But Deborah wasn't done. Over the next 2 weeks, she got creative. She planted no-wake zone signs along my shoreline, claiming they were for wildlife protection. She organized 6 a.m. meditation sessions on the community dock next to mine, complete with gongs and chanting. She even tried to get the county to declare my section of the lake a protected wetland. Each plan crashed and burned. The county laughed off the wetland idea. The meditation group scattered when I blasted Jimmy Buffett at equal volume. The signs? Let's just say they vanished one night, and I have no idea how. The breaking point came over the 4th of July weekend. Deborah had planned a big HOA picnic by the Lake Brass Band, potluck. The works. I decided to host my own party. 3 jet skis, a floating trampoline, and a waterproof speaker blasting classic rock. Deborah lost it. She grabbed the HOA's emergency bullhorn and started yelling about permits and decibel levels. When that didn't work, she hopped in a kayak and paddled out to confront us, trying to serve me papers while bobbing in the waves. Someone caught it on video, her flailing with a soggy citation, getting splashed by passing jet skis. It went viral on the Pine Ridge Facebook page by dinner. The final showdown was the following Monday at another emergency HOA meeting. Deborah had roped in her nephew, a baby-faced lawyer fresh out of law school who specialized in community wellness litigation. He argued that exclusive riparian rights didn't mean disruptive riparian rights, and that my jet ski was creating a hostile aquatic environment. He even tried to claim my 3-seater was a commercial-grade watercraft. Sandra dismantled him in 10 minutes flat. She cited actual case law, not wellness blogs, and explained that riparian rights were as ironclad as the deed itself. Then she dropped the hammer. My client has been remarkably patient with this harassment, she said, sliding a thick folder across the table. We've documented 37 instances of targeted discrimination by Ms. Fitzgerald, including false citations, defamatory statements to neighbors, and attempted fraud in her wetland application. We're prepared to file a lawsuit for harassment, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Damages requested, $150,000. The room exploded. Board members shouted about insurance premiums and special assessments. Roger Pelton stood up and said he'd been catching more fish since my jet ski stirred up the water. Deborah's face went from purple to gray. The board voted unanimously to acknowledge my water rights and issue a formal apology. They also censured Deborah for overstepping her authority, But the real fallout came later. The HOA's insurance company launched an investigation after Sandra filed a complaint. They found Deborah had misused HOA funds for her wetland scheme and falsified meeting minutes to make her vendetta look board-approved. At a special recall meeting 3 weeks later, she was ousted as president by a vote of 87 to 12. The 12 were her book club buddies, and even they looked embarrassed. The HOA also slapped her with a $22,000 bill for legal fees caused by her crusade. As the final tally was read, Deborah stood at the back of the room, clutching her rule book like a lifeline. When they announced what she owed, she let out a half-gasp, half-sob, and walked out. Princess. Her Yorkie trotted after her, silent for once. I went home, cracked a beer, and took my jet ski out for a sunset ride.